Now we are going to go over the master game rules for Heroscape. Again, we'll be using the 2nd edition rulebook from Rise of the Valkyrie Master Set. This is going to add some more complex abilities, some more complex rules, glyphs, and other things. So let's jump right into it. First, get ready to play. Number 1 is set up your battlefield. To do this, choose a battlefield and a master game scenario from the battlefield and game scenario section in the rulebook. After you've played several games, you may want to create your own battlefield and game scenarios. The flexibility of this system allows you to create any map you want and any rule set you want, and allows for a lot of creativity and imagination. For this Master Game Guide rules explanation, I have chosen to set up Table of the Giants and Meagle's Tomb for some examples in movements and attacks. So with those maps set up to explain the rules as they're posted in the rulebook, teammates and seating are different when you're playing. If you're playing a team game, teammates should sit next to each other on one side of the table facing their opponents. Playing with multiple master sets and expansion sets, there's a few special rules for doing this. Combining 2 or more master sets or collecting expansion sets gives you lots of new options. You can create a supersized battlefield and play with any number of players. You can, quote-unquote, even up the playing field by having the same army as an opponent. You can even boost the point value of your army to match the bigger battlefield, but along with that extra excitement comes a few special rules. Unique army cards. All of the army cards in a master set are unique. There's only one of them in the box. If you're combining 2 sets of army cards, make sure that no player has more than one of the same unique army card. For example, your army can't include 2 Grimnacks. However, you and your opponent can each have the same unique army card. For example, you and your opponent can each have a Grimnack in your armies. Grimnack. Continuing with the special rules of using multiple master sets and or expansion sets is common army cards. For example, we've got there a common squad of Marro Drudge. These cards are included in expansion sets or future master sets that came out after Rise of the Valkyrie. Your army can include 2 or more of the same common army card. If so, follow these special rules. First, you don't need to keep these figures separate, that is, keep track of which figure belongs to which card. For example, if you're using 2 cards worth of Marro Drudge, each order marker placed on either army card activates any 4 of them. And right here, we have several army cards out. When an army figure on your common army card is destroyed, you may place it on any matching army card, if you do not have any of these figures destroyed. If a common army card already has a destroyed figure on it, you must fill up that card first before placing the destroyed figure on an empty army card. There are several ways that people do keep track of their common units. One is just stacking up all the army cards to represent each Marro Drudge in their army for this example. So when 3 get destroyed off of the map, you would just take away one of the army cards and you still have another one. So that way placing your order markers, which we will get to in a moment, on these army cards will still activate any of your 3 Marro Drudge that are still available on the board to use. Another way that people keep track of things is having a single army card to represent each Marro Drudge that they would have drafted into their army. We have 15 of them here, and they are 50 points each for drafting. I prefer the other way of having the army cards all stacked up, but personal opinion doesn't really matter to how you play. You have chosen your battlefield. Now, in the master game, your army figures get serious, with special powers and special rules for moving and battling. Because of their extra strength and powers, these warriors can't be defeated so easily. As a Valkyrie general, your mission is to gather a well-balanced army, lead them boldly into battle, and wage war strategically to conquer the enemy. Good luck, and may the best Valkyrie general win. In Heroscape, the object of the game is to create a battlefield, choose your army, then fight the battle of all time. To win, be the first player to achieve your objective, or the first team. In this game, you'll use the master game side of the army cards. As in the basic game, each army card features either a hero or a squad, with move, range, attack, and defense numbers. But you notice that each card has much more information about the figures. As you play, you'll become more familiar with how this information works during the game. Let's break it down first on the left-hand side of the card, starting at the top where it says human. That is the species or race of the figure or figures on the army card. Below that is whether they are a unique, uncommon, or common hero or squad. All army cards and figures in the Rise of the Valkyrie Master set were unique. There was only one instance of each of them. Uncommon and common army cards appear only in expansion sets. And whether they are a hero or a squad, hero cards feature a single, usually powerful figure. Squad cards feature two or more, usually less powerful figures. Your army can include all heroes, all squads, or any combination. Then below that is their class. That is the type of figure. For example, Agent Carr is an agent. And then below that is their personality, their dominant characteristic, which is tricky for Agent Carr. And then below that is their size and height, the size of the hero or squad, and the number of levels high they are in the game. Special power or powers. Most figures have special powers that allow them to quote-unquote break the rules when moving, attacking, and defending. Let's just take a look at Agent Carr's here. For example, Ghost Walk. Agent Carr can move through all figures. Sword of Reckoning 4. If Agent Carr is attacking an adjacent figure, add 4 dice to Agent Carr's attack. And Disengage. Agent Carr is never attacked when leaving an engagement. Those will be explained a little more in detail when we go over the rules of the master game. Now, moving to the right-hand side of the card, we have the target point, the green dot. The green dot shows the area from where you determine line of sight. And then the red is the hit zone. The red area shows what parts of the figure can be attacked. You'll notice the gray. The gray means those parts of the figure cannot be attacked. This is used when checking line of sight. And now we'll just go over this, starting at the top with their life, the number of wounds the figure or figures can take before being destroyed. Move, the maximum number of spaces the figure or figures may move. Range, the maximum number of spaces away that the figure or figures can attack. And attack, the number of dice you roll when rolling an attack. Defense, the number of dice you roll when you roll to defend. And then below that is points, the value of the army card based on the power of its figures. There are 3 major themes in Heroscape: historical, science fiction, and fantasy. All warriors can interact with each other in this battle of all time, as the story is that the Valkyrie generals are pulling warriors from all across time and space and different genres and mixing them and matching them for the battle of all time. As units came out or were revealed, mixing and matching genres was also possible and fun. For example, here's historical with the science fiction twist, and then there's also the future, which falls under the historical category, and also science fiction. Then later on, other examples included fantasy units with historical weapons or science fiction weapons, etc. Heroscape lends itself to presenting pretty much any idea you can come up with. Using a pre-made army. Experienced players may know exactly which armies they want based on the game scenario, the point values, their favorite figures, or other factors. If you've already chosen or brought along your army, place your cards in front of you, then players roll to see who places his army on the battlefield first. Reroll ties. The highest roller will place his entire army first. Placement passes to the left. You must place your entire army in the same starting zone. And in the example here used, the master game Clashing Fronts, which uses Table of the Giants, these are the starting zones for Player 1 and Player 2. They are these 24 hex rock terrain pieces. You cannot place any figures in an enemy-occupied starting zone unless stated otherwise in the game scenario or agreed upon beforehand by the players who are playing the game. Teammates start in the same starting zone. If there are more army figures than spaces in the starting zone, you cannot use extra figures. Drafting an army. Drafting is a fair and fun way for players to choose their army cards for a well-balanced game. When you select an army card, take the figure or figures shown on the card and place them on the battlefield in a starting zone immediately before the next player selects an army card. You cannot place any figures in an enemy-occupied starting zone unless stated otherwise in the game scenario. Teammates start in the same starting zone. If there are more army figures than spaces in the starting zone, you cannot use any extra figures, and you must place your entire army in the same starting zone. For a 2-player game, players draft as follows. Both players roll the 20-sided die, re-roll any ties. Wow. The higher roll drafts first by choosing 1 army card. We'll say player 1, who had the higher initiative, chooses Sivaris, and then player 2, having looked through the army cards, will then choose 2 army cards. Chooses Grimneck and the Zedian Guards. Each player in turn then chooses 1 army card until both players' armies have been completely chosen and placed. And for this example, we'll say we're playing a 2-player clashing fronts game scenario on the table of the Giants' battlefield. This game calls for each player to gather a 400-point army. And for a 2-player game, we'll just use this as the example for the 400-point limit for the 2 armies that both players have chosen. And for a 3 or more player game, players draft their armies as follows. All players roll a 20-sided die, re-rolling any ties. The highest roller drafts first by choosing 1 army card. The player to the left then chooses 1 army card, and so on. The last player to draft chooses 2 army cards. Drafting goes back around the table. It reverses direction. The last player, the player who drafted first, will then choose 2 army cards. The draft reverses direction again. If at any time a player cannot pick another army card because choosing another army card would exceed their total army point limit, that player must pass. If you pass, you have completed your army. Continuing going back and forth around the table with the last player in the chain choosing 2 army cards and reversing the draft direction until all players have completed their armies. And now, we'll say you have chosen your army for a 400-point total and placed them where shown. Grimnack, the most powerful in this instance, is right up front. And then we go over to your opponent's army. They chose this army for a 390-point total and placed them in their starting zone as shown. Sivaris and Deathwalker, figure with long ranges for attack, are in the forefront. These, 1, 2, 3, and X, are order markers. Each player will take 4 order markers, 1, 2, 3, and X. On each round, you'll place these on your army cards to show the order in which your figures will move and attack. Wound markers and dice. Place all of the wound markers near the battlefield. Place the combat dice near the battlefield. The combat dice are used as attack dice, rolling for skulls, and also defense dice, rolling for shield. Glyphs, these quote-unquote magical enchantments, are placed on certain spaces in several of the game scenarios as directed in the Battlefield and Game Scenario section. Most of them grant special powers when a figure lands on them. Let's go over glyphs. Depending on the scenario, glyphs are placed on the top of battlefield spaces, either power side up or symbol side up. Glyphs are stationary unless otherwise stated in a scenario. When one of your figures moves onto a glyph that is symbol side up, stop there and turn the glyph power side up. The powers on the glyph take effect immediately. When a figure lands on a power side up glyph, it must stop. Note, a double space figure must stop when its leading end moves onto it. Some glyphs grant temporary powers, while others grant longer lasting ones. There are permanent glyphs. The power of each permanent glyph is in effect for as long as a figure is standing on it. Exception. There are also other glyphs that are scenario-specific, which represent objects as directed by the specific game scenario. The glyph of Brandar is usually representing this. There are also temporary glyphs. The power of each temporary glyph takes effect only once. When one of your figures moves on to any of these glyphs, follow its rules, then remove it from the game. The battle then begins. The game is played in several rounds. A round consists of 3 turns per each player. Again, using clashing fronts as an example, a round of play. This is the round marker track for this scenario. In the battlefield and game scenario section of the rulebook, each game scenario features a numbered line where players keep track of the rounds they've played. Before starting the first round, place the black round marker on the number 1. At the end of each round, move the round marker ahead to the next number. Each round of play consists of the following 4 steps. Number 1, place your order markers. Number 2, roll for initiative. Number 3, players take their turns, one at a time, until each player has taken 3 turns. And number 4, move the round marker to the next number. All of these steps will now be explained. First, we'll do with place your order markers. Step number 1 is placing your order markers. On a turn, you'll move and attack with the figures on one army card. Decide now which army card you'll use on which turn. Then place an order marker on those cards. 1 for the first turn, 2 for the second, and then 3 for the third turn. You may place 2 or more order markers on the same card if you want to use that card for 2 or even all 3 of your turns. Players place their markers at the same time. Place your markers facing you so that your opponents can't see the numbers on them. Teammates can look at each other's markers. The X order marker is a decoy. You can place it on any army card just to keep your opponent guessing. Note, more competitive players can take turns placing all of their order markers. To do this, roll the 20-sided die. The higher roller places all of his order markers first. Then the player to the left places all of their order markers, and so on, until all order markers have been placed. For example, number 1 here, we'll do on this round. You decide to mobilize Grimnack first, your first turn, your Marro Warriors, your second turn, and then Finn, the Viking Champion, your third turn. You place the X order marker on the Zedian guards to, quote-unquote, fake out your opponent. On this round, the opponent decides to mobilize his 2 figures with long attack range. That would be Sivaris on the first turn, then the Deathwalker for the second and third turns. They place the order marker X on the Krav Maga agents to fake out their opponent. Roll for initiative. Now all players roll a 20-sided die. The highest roller takes the first turn, then play passes to the left. If there's a tie for highest roll, the tying players re-roll. In cases where the roll for initiative is affected by a special power of a glyph, the power applies to re-rolls as well. Well, a 1 and a 20. On your turn. During a round, each player will take 3 turns. Usually you'll do 3 actions on your turn in this order. Action number 1, reveal your order marker. Start your turn by revealing your order marker for that turn, then laying it number side up on the army card. Note, later in the game, it's possible that the figures on that army card have been destroyed earlier in the round. In such case, you lose your turn. Then, step 2 is move figures on your army card. Now you may move any or all figures on your chosen army card, if you want to. Follow these rules for moving each figure. Check the move number. In this example, Finn, the Viking Champion, has a movement of 5. Your figure can move in any direction up to the move number on its army card. For example, with a move number of 5, a figure can move 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 spaces. Uneven terrain and water may limit movement. Here is how basic movement works. Finn, the Viking Champion, has a move number of 5. You advance him the full 5 spaces toward opposing figures. Note that Finn may move through the Marro Warrior because it is friendly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When dealing with a squad, move squad figures in any order, one at a time. Passing and landing on other figures. You can move through a space with a friendly figure on it, one of your own or a teammate's, unless the figure is engaged, which we will get to engagement rules in a little bit. You can't move through a space with an opponent's figure on it, in this case Sivaris. And you can't end your move on a space with any other figure. No. Moving up. When you move to a higher level, count the side of each higher level as one space, as well as the space you'll land on. In the following example, I will show you how to do this. If your figure can't move enough spaces to reach the top of a ledge, then it cannot move there. Note, glyphs and water spaces do not add height to any spaces in which they are placed. For example of moving up, count the side of each level as you move Finn to the top of the first ledge. Note that Finn cannot move to the top ledge because it would take a total movement of 7 to get to this spot, and his move number is only 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this would be 5, so he cannot get the 6 and 7 to get up there. Height limit. A figure cannot move up a number of levels equal to or then higher than their height all at once. For an example of a height limit for moving up, the Marro warrior cannot move up to the space marked here because that would be 6 moves to the top, and the Marro warrior's height number is 4. Moving down. When you move to a lower level, you don't need to count the sides on the way down, but there may be a penalty for moving to a much lower level. Here is an example of how you move down. To move the Marro warrior down from this ledge, you don't need to count the sides of the levels, and the Marro warrior has a movement of 6. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Falling. When a figure moves down to a much lower level, it may get wounded. This rule does not apply if a figure drops onto a water space. A figure can fall onto a water space from any level. A fall is defined as follows. If the drop is equal to or more than the figure's height, you must roll 1 combat die after moving to see if it was wounded. Major fall. If the drop is 10 levels more than the figure's height, you must roll 2 additional dice for a total of 3 dice. For each skull you roll, add 1 wound marker to the figure's army card. Extreme fall. If the drop is 20 levels more than the figure's height, you must roll the 20-sided die. If you roll a 19 or 20, you survive without taking any falling damage. If you roll 1 to 18, your figure is destroyed. For example, when you move a Marro warrior down from this 5-level cliff, roll 1 attack die for the fall. Because the cliff is 1 higher than its height of 4. I did not roll a skull, so this warrior is safe. Here is an example of a fall into water, which would be just a simple move. The Marro warrior would not take any damage because it lands in water. And again, this water tile adds no height to the tile that it is on. It is considered to have a height of 0. Now, if the water was not there, since this level is 10 levels higher than the Marro's height of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The Marro moving down would take major fall damage, possibly. It's where you take 2 attack die, roll them, and he miraculously lives. So your Marro warrior may jump down that far. And now we have an example of an extreme fall. If the level is 20 levels higher than the height of the figure, it would take possible extreme falling damage, which in this case, this is 20 levels above its height of 4. So if the Marro is to attempt this move, you would take the 20-sided die, roll it, and he lives. On a 19 or 20, the Marro warrior is fine. Why you would attempt such a move, I don't know, but sometimes just that zany, crazy stuff is a little fun. But that is an extreme fall. Moving into water. When you move onto a water space from any other space, even from another water space, you must end your movement there. Note, double space figures can move past 1 water space that is between 2 non-water spaces without stopping. They must stop only if they move onto 2 water spaces. The example of moving into water: when your opponent moves Deathwalker onto a water space, he must stop there. The Deathwalker 9000 has a movement of 5, so here's an example of moving out of water. When moving Deathwalker from this water space to the adjacent land space, your opponent counts 2 spaces. Because this is a height of 0, you will count the side of this tile as if you were moving up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Moving double space figures. Some figures, like Grimnack and Mimring, take up to 2 spaces. When moving a double space figure, decide which end to lead with, for example, the front end or the back end. Then move the figure so that the other end follows the same spaces that the leading end just left. Always end a double spaced figure's move on 2 same level spaces. And here's an example of how that works. From his starting spaces, Grimnack moves 5 spaces head first, with his hind section trailing along the same spaces as his front section. Counting the sides of the ledge, Grimnack ends his move at the top on 2 same level spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Moving under an overhang. On this Meekel's Tomb battlefield, notice that Finn the Viking champion can move under this overhang, but Grimnack cannot. Figures can also move up onto low overhangs. When you move a figure up a low overhang, count the nearby support tiles. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep the base on the space. When you end a figure's move, make sure its base lies flat and it is on that space only, or spaces in the case of double space figures. No part of its base may overlap onto another space or area between spaces. Tight quarters. Some battlefields have narrow passageways, ruins, and overhangs that may limit the movement of some figures. A figure can't move through or onto a space that it can't fit completely onto. In this example, Grimnack moves into tight quarters. Grimnack can't back into this nook because his tail keeps him from standing. However, he can move forward into the nook. Glyphs and special powers may also affect a figure's movement. Check your figure's army card for special powers. For example, the Tarn Viking warriors have Berserker Charge. After moving and before attacking, roll the 20-sided die. If you roll a 15 or higher, you may move all the Tarn Viking warriors again. And then, in the and/or instance of glyphs and/or special powers, there's glyphs that add movement, like the Glyph of Valda. If you have a figure on it that is a permanent glyph, it gives all of your units +2 to their move. Engagement rules. A figure becomes engaged when it moves adjacent to an opponent's figure. Adjacent exceptions. Most of the time, if a figure is next to another figure, they are adjacent. Here are some exceptions to that rule. If one figure's base is on a level equal to or higher than the height of the other figure, they are not adjacent, and therefore not engaged. In this example, Finn, the Viking champion, is not adjacent to the Deathwalker because the Deathwalker 9000 is on a ledge which is 5 levels high and is equal to Finn's height of 5. If a ruin is between the two figures, both figures' heights must be higher than the ruin to be engaged. If both figures' heights are lower than the ruin, or only one of the figures' height is lower, they are not engaged. For example, a ruin has a height of 6. If Finn, the Viking champion, has a height of 5 and Deathwalker 9000 has a height of 7 and are next to each other, with a ruin between them, they are not engaged. Leaving an engagement. You may move around a figure that you are engaged with, but as soon as you move away from it onto a space that is not adjacent to it, that figure may take a quote-unquote passing swipe at your figure. To do this, the player who controls the figure rolls 1 attack die. You do not roll any dice to defend your figure. If a skull is rolled, your figure takes 1 wound. Place the wound marker on its army card. Unless it is a squad figure of 1 life, then that figure is destroyed. And again, when moving adjacent to an enemy figure, that is when you are considered engaged. Multiple engagements. Your figure may become engaged with more than one figure at the same time. As you leave each engagement, the engaged figure rolls 1 attack die. For each skull rolled, your figure takes 1 wound. Here is an example of a multiple engagement. When you move Finn, the Viking champion, away from two opposing Tarn Viking warriors, your opponent rolls 2 dice, 1 for each Viking warrior that was engaged with Finn, the Viking champion. And it looks like Finn will be taking 2 wounds that are placed on Finn, the Viking champion's army card. And now the third step of your turn, action number 3, attack with figures on the army card. Now it's time for your hero or squad to attack. Who can attack? Any figures on your chosen army card within range and within clear line of sight can attack. If no figure on your army card meets these 2 conditions, you can't attack. I have a little vocal fan during this rules video. Looking for hidden figures. At any time, feel free to walk around the battlefield to find out which figures are hiding where, behind ruins or raised terrain areas, etc. As you do this, other players will likely shield their order markers so you can't see them. Before attacking with a figure, check range and line of sight. See, there's a hidden Tarn Viking warrior down there. Before attacking with a figure, check the range and line of sight as follows. Range first. A targeted figure must be within the attacking figure's range. For example, with a range of 6, your Marro warrior can attack any figure 6 spaces from it. A figure with a range of 1, for example, Finn the Viking champion, may only attack figures adjacent to it. Engaged figures. If one of your figures is engaged with one or more other figures, that figure can attack only the figures it is engaged with. A double space figure can attack from either space. When checking range, don't count extra spaces for higher levels. However, being on a higher level is an advantage during attack. That's called height advantage. Also, if the distance between you and the targeted figure includes an area with no spaces on it, such as that, you don't count extra spaces. You would just count around the edge of the battlefield. Attacking around other figures is possible. You may attack figures even if other figures are between you and the targeted figure. The only thing that matters is if you have line of sight to that attack. Line of sight. To attack a targeted figure, your figure must be able to, quote-unquote, see from its location. Unlike range, the line of sight is an imaginary, straight line between your attacking figure's target point and the targeted figure's hit zone. It has nothing to do with spaces on the battlefield. If the targeted figure is, for example, behind a ruin or a cliff so that your figure can't, quote-unquote, take aim at it, then no attack is possible. To determine if there's a clear line of sight, check the target point, the green dot on your figure's army card, and the hit zone, the red area on the targeted figure's army card. Then get behind your figure and look to see if its target point can, quote-unquote, see any part of the targeted figure's hit zone. If so, there's a clear line of sight. Adjusting figures. Players may touch or move figures only on their own turns. For example, a player cannot move his figure out of line of sight on an opponent's turn. If players disagree whether or not there is a clear line of sight, just roll a 20-sided die. The higher roll will win the dispute. Here is an example on how to determine if a targeted figure is within an attacker's range and line of sight. For example, you want the Marro warrior to attack Sevaris. First, you count the spaces between them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Marro has a range of 6, so Sevaris is within range. Then you check for clear line of sight from your figure's target point, which is the Marro's face, to Sevaris' hit zone. The Tarn Viking is in the way, but your figure can still see part of Sevaris on their hit zone if you determine line of sight. So from this Marro warrior, you can still see Sevaris. Attacking. The figures on your chosen army card attack one at a time in any order. Each figure can attack only once, but different figures can attack the same opposing figure. Note, some figures have special powers that allow them to attack more than once. Before attacking, consider the height advantage, special powers, and glyphs, if any, as explained. The snooze you lose rule is in effect. If you forget to do this, tough luck, maybe next time you'll remember. Height advantage. If the base of one figure is higher than the base of the other figure, no matter their actual size or height, the higher figure has height advantage and rolls 1 extra die. If the base of the figure is 10 or more levels higher than the height of the lower figure, the higher figure rolls 2 extra attack dice. When figuring height advantage, remember that glyphs and water spaces do not add height to the spaces they are on. So in this example here, this Marro warrior is 1 level higher than Sevarus' base, so they would have height advantage and roll an extra die. Now, since Sevarus has a height of 5, if this Marro warrior was about 15 levels above Sevarus, then it would be the bigger height advantage and you'd roll the 2 extra attack dice. Special powers and special attacks. Many figures have special powers or abilities that help them move, attack, defend, and more. Check your figure's army card to see what special powers or abilities, if any, your figure can use. If your army card includes a special attack, you may use this attack instead of attacking normally. There are several examples in the game of how this works, but we'll take a look at Sevarus here. Double attack. When Sevarus attacks, he may attack 1 additional time. Now that's just 2 normal attacks. However, a special attack on the Deathwalker 9000 would be the Explosion special attack, which instead of the normal attack of 4 dice, you would do what it says here under the rules. For example, range 7 and attack 3. Choose a figure to attack. Any figures adjacent to the chosen figure are also affected by the Explosion special attack. Deathwalker only needs a clear sight shot at the chosen figure. Roll 3 attack dice once for all affected figures. Each figure rolls defense dice separately. Deathwalker can be affected by its own Explosion special attack, which is the warning. Use your special powers and attack strategically. Some are so powerful they may affect even friendly figures. Some glyphs gives the attacker or defender an advantage. For example, this glyph here, the glyph of Astrid, gives all of your units an attack +1 to their normal attack. To carry out an attack, follow these steps. Announce which figure is the attacker. For example, this will be the Marro warrior, and Sevarus will be our defender. Check the attack number on your attacker's army card, adding an extra dice for height advantage, special powers, or glyphs. Then roll that number of attack dice. After you roll, the defender then will roll the number of defense dice on the defender's army card, which for example is Sevarus having 2. And Sevarus is a defender. So as the defender, this is a good time to remind yourself of height advantage. Again, if the base of one figure is higher than the base of the other figure, no matter their actual size or height, the higher figure has height advantage and rolls 1 extra die. If the base of the higher figure is 10 or more levels higher than the height of the lower figure, the higher figure will roll 2 extra die. So in this case, Sevarus, defending against an attack from a figure who is lower, will roll an extra defense dice. Extra defense die. If their figure was 10 levels higher than the height of the Marro warrior, for example, if this was 14 levels high, that's 10 levels higher than the Marro warrior's height of 4, and Sevarus would roll 2 extra defense dice. If the attacker rolls the same number of skulls, hits, or less than the defender rolls shields, your attack is unsuccessful. The attacking and defending figures stay where they are, and the attack is over. If the attacker rolls more skulls, hits, then the defender rolls shields, your attack is successful. For each unblocked skull, hit, the attacker rolled, 1 wound marker is placed on the defender's army card. Life. Here we go. When a figure has as many wound markers as the life number on its army card, that figure is destroyed. A figure with only 1 life is destroyed by 1 wound. The player who controls the destroyed figure places it on the army card. When all figures on an army card have been destroyed, that army card is out of play. Do not reveal any order markers that are on that card for that round out of play. On future rounds, you can't take any turns for that card. Any order markers still on that army card come back into play and can be placed in future rounds. After you've finished attacking, your turn is over. The player then takes a turn who is on your left. Here's an example of an attack and its outcome. On one of your Marro warrior's attacks, it will attack Sevarus, and it'll roll 2 dice, which shows 2 skulls. So there's 2 incoming damage towards Savaris. Savaris takes 2 wounds if he does not roll anything, which for this example, he did not. So he would take 2 wounds. Since he has more than 1 life, you'll take your wound markers and place them on Savaris' army card. Let's say in this example that attack played out the same way, but Savaris was already previously wounded. He had 2 wound markers from a previous attack. He now has 4 wound markers and it is destroyed because it equals to his life. Your opponent places Savaris on the army card and leaves the order marker there. They must skip their turn for Savaris on this round if turn 3 has not come up yet. Ending a round. After the last player takes his 3rd turn, the round is over. Move the round marker ahead 1 space on the track, if no one has won yet. Players then begin a new round by placing their order markers, then rolling for initiative again. It is easy to forget to advance the round marker, so remember to do that. Most game scenarios set victory conditions for each game. However, if the game hasn't ended yet, and you are ending the final round, you may decide that player or side with the most points wins, and this is how scoring would work. In cases where scoring is necessary, each player or team scores points for each army card with figures still on the battlefield. Score the full points listed on the army card, even if there is only 1 surviving squad figure. Now that you know how to play the game and how to end it, we'll discuss special powers in a little more detail using examples of figures from the Rise of the Valkyrie Master set. Special power, or powers, of figures keep each game exciting, challenging, and unpredictable. Always be aware of the special powers of your army figures. They can make a big difference in your game. Special attack rule. Special attacks can never be modified by glyphs or other special powers or height advantages. Attack dice and defense dice. Anytime an army card refers to attack dice or defense dice, use the combat dice. For example, on Raylan's card, it states in defensive aura, all figures you control within 4 clear sight spaces of Raylan add 2 to their defense dice. Raylan's defensive aura does not affect Raylan. So that means all figures within 4 clear sight spaces add 2 total combat dice when rolling for defense. Multiple targets. When a special attack targets more than 1 figure, the attacker decides which order in which the defender will roll combat dice for each figure affected. In an exception to this, Mimring's special attack is unique. The Fire Line Special Attack. Range Special. Attack 4. Choose 8 spaces in a straight line from Mimring. All figures on those spaces who are in line of sight are affected by Mimring's Fire Line Special Attack. Roll 4 attack dice once for all affected figures. Affected figures roll defense dice separately, so it is important, as with anything, to pay attention to the wording of the rules. Here is a visual example of Mimring's Fire Line Special Attack. From either his front space or back space, Mimring's Fire Line Special Attack can affect figures within 8 spaces in any direction. Seeing the red lines there. The affected figures can be on any level as long as Mimring has clear line of sight. The characters closest in line to Mimring roll defense dice first. The next closest characters roll next, and so on. Now what if you were to Fire Line Special Attack into an overhang? If Mimring uses his Fire Line Special Attack into an overhang, it affects the figures on all levels in line of attack, as long as he can see them. As shown here, the Airborne Elite, we'll call this one A1, A2, and A3, are all affected by Mimring's attack. They will roll defense dice separately after Mimring rolls 4 attack dice once. Flying and overhangs. As shown here, Raylan flies out of the overhang and onto the top, ignoring extra spaces for elevation. Marro Warrior 1 will roll a leaving engagement die since she was engaged with this Marro Warrior before starting her move. This is Marro Warrior 2, and then Marro Warrior 3, and Marro Warrior 4. Marro Warrior 3 will not roll any dice because she flies over him without landing. Notice that Raylan can also fly over ruins. She has a movement of 6, so this would be 1 with a leaving engagement attack, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And she becomes engaged with that airborne elite. Special shout out to an expansion figure called Taelord, the Curie Warrior. Raylin, the Curie Warrior, has flying. When counting spaces for Raylin's movement, ignore elevations. Raylin may fly over water without stopping, pass over figures without becoming engaged, and fly over obstacles such as ruins. When Raylin starts to fly, if she is engaged, she will take any leaving engagement attacks. Now, Taelord often gets a little love from the community by pointing out his flying is different, although it should be called stealth flying. When counting spaces for Taelord's movement, ignore elevations. Taelord may fly over water without stopping, pass over figures without becoming engaged, and fly over obstacles such as ruins. Combining that with the passing over figures without becoming engaged and missing that final sentence of taking leaving engagement attacks, Taelord has stealth flying and may disengage without penalty. If I'm wrong on that, which I don't think I am, I think that's how I understand it, I will errata that in the comments. And as a final example from the Rise of the Valkyrie Master set, we're going to look at the Airborne Elite and their Grenade Lob Special Attack. They have a range 5, lob 12, and attack 2. Use this power once per game. Start the game with a grenade marker on this card. Remove the grenade marker to throw grenades. One at a time, do the following with each Airborne Elite. Choose a figure to attack. No clear line of sight is needed. Any figures adjacent to the chosen figure are also affected by the grenade's special attack. Roll 2 attack dice once for all affected figures. Each figure rolls defense dice separately. You're controlling the Airborne Elite here. You decide to lob grenades at the Marro Warriors and the Izumi Samurai. Remove the grenade marker from the game. You target all figures within range 5 and a lob height of 12 levels or less. For example, the airborne unit number A1, which will be this guy down here, can't attack the Marro Warriors. M2, which is going to be this one, because the overhang is 10 levels high and the ruin on top has a height of 6. So that's a total of 16 to try and get a grenade up over that ruin, and can't do it. To lob a grenade, a clear line of sight is not needed. Only a clear area to lob the grenade. However, we will go through the attack here. This is A1. This will be A2. This will be A3. And up here is A4. While he can't attack the Marro Warriors, he can lob the grenade over onto the Izumi Samurai, targeting this one here. So, A1 lobs the grenade at Samurai 2. This will be Samurai 1, and this will be Samurai 3. He lobs at S2. S1 and S3 are also affected since they're adjacent. So, you roll attack dice once for all affected figures, and there's 2. Each Samurai would roll separately, so let's see how it goes here. 5 defense dice on the Izumi Samurai. 1 is destroyed, which would be the announced attacker, him. Then we move to S1, defended. Now S3, also defended. Okay, so then we'll do Airborne Elite 2 attacks. He lobs a grenade at this Samurai here. 1. Defended. And defended. Both Samurai are fine. And then, Airborne Elite 3 will also lob a grenade at those Samurai for 1. Defended. And defended. The Samurai are fine. Then, we'll go over to A4. Now, the wall is only a height of 6. He can actually lob over the wall, and he chooses to attack the Marro Warriors. All of them will be affected, because if he targets this one, each is, in turn, affected by the grenade, which was a dud, and he is a failure. Now, as you play Heroscape, one final thing to remember is the special power references on army cards. Some special powers make reference to the species, personality, Valkyrie, unique, common, uncommon, hero, squad, and or class of other figures. For example, the Deathwalker 9000 makes reference to Solborg Guards. The Zedian Guards, which came in the Rise of the Valkyrie Master set, fall into this category. Also, Grimneck makes reference to Orc Warriors. The Orc Warriors came in Wave 1 as Blade Gruts and also Arrow Gruts. That is the master game rules for Heroscape, 3D battle of all time.